Stacy.
Thank you, Candace.
Yeah. So Candace Quarles, I'm HR business partner at Amazon. I've been in HR for 12 years. In a function, and I've been in employee relations. I've been on the hiring side, recruiting, benefits, always been in HR. I love my job currently, but let me tell you, Amazon does work. So what they say is true. I look forward to hearing so much from all of my peers on the panel. A little bit about me personally, and my husband and I have a 9-year-old. She started a YouTube channel, and like she's so geeked about it. So I'm trying to support her and trying to get her digital products and all these things that I've been wanting to do with my time. But I certainly am like so thankful to be a part. That I am not a coder or anyone in coding. My company does that. I do not. So thank you for even including me in this panel. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, bring us home. I'm Angie, and I have like a different perspective on some of this stuff because I have never been in HR, but I have been an engineer, just a dumb one, because I was a civil engineer, which all my software engineering friends at Carnegie Mellon used to call stone crushers. However, when I started this career coaching thing like 6 years ago, never expecting it to become as big as it did, glad it has, that ended up becoming an integral part of my ability to coach tech professionals because I can at least understand technical things and like the detail orientedness of what you do. But I always love an opportunity to come and talk to hiring managers and talent acquisition and HR professionals because it either confirms I'm really good at my job or confirms I'm really terrible at my job and I have horrible perspectives. But so I'm excited to see which one it is today. Let's hope it falls in a nice gray middle. And I'm coming to you from Colorado. I live in the mountains of Colorado outside of Aspen. It's a horrible place to live. And we are hot off a quick trip to Moab because my parents have been here for 2 weeks visiting for the first time in 15 years. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. And so when Stacy emailed me and was like, can you do this? I was like, I'm going to make it happen because I couldn't do the last one because we were traveling. So I'm excited to finally be here. And it's really cool to see how kind of definitely countrywide, maybe even global, our audience is tonight. So this is going to be fun.
Well, I am so excited. So specifically on some of this, like we talked a little bit about this in your kind of specializations and purviews. But when we talk about a profile, there's a lot of things that we can bring into that. Like we talked about SEO, LinkedIn, we talked about personal brand, we talked about resume, website. How do you actually think about a profile? Like, what do you try from your perspective either to look for, orchestrate, put together? What does that actually mean? Like, it's so generic.
I'll kick it off because I'll tell you from like I would say from the step one perspective of I'm going to go job search or I want to focus on career development. And then I think it'll be really cool to have like hiring and HR chime in on how that's received. But I think about a profile as I would say personal brand is how I think about it. And that is like, what are you putting forth to the world through all touch points and all channels, whether that is the resume, which I think is what most people think of as the core of kind of your professional profile nowadays, but it's got more facets to it because LinkedIn is a huge component of it. And I know we're going to get into that. Cover letters are the bane of everyone's existence. However, that is an aspect of it. But then there's also the delivery mechanisms and the way you deliver that personal brand in interviews, in informational interviews, how and who you network with, how you message outreach to recruiters, talent acquisition, human resources, HR. So it's really this kind of thinking about yourself as a little brand. Are you a Patagonia that everybody associates with environment and outdoors? And does everything you do reinforce that message? You're human. You are a human being and you have a brand whether you've articulated it or not. People say something when you're not in the room and you should be the one to dictate and articulate and have the clarity about what you want them to say. And that's your personal brand. That's your profile.
I definitely agree with what Angie said. Going back to the context, as I mentioned about the HR tech company that I work with, some people's profiles are not telling what needs to be said about them. You know, I have my best friend works in talent acquisition now. She's working in talent acquisition for about 4 or 5 years now. But I did a research on her in our system, and she read like she was still working in retail management. You know, if I was looking for a recruiter in her city with her skill sets, everything I put in that I knew that she had, she did not come up in my profile search. And so I said to her, hey, update your LinkedIn, do some things, because if you come to a space where you need a new job or this or whatever, you're not going to be the first person that comes up because you still have all this retail history, sales, information on your background and on your history, and things like that. So definitely, it is the way that you are being presented socially, digitally, in the job search space that will help recruiters find you for the right opportunities and the right role. Because if I work with media companies, and if you claim you're a producer or even an on-air person, if you don't have a video portfolio or any graphic portfolio, then you're not really serious. You're not senior level. You're probably not going to be the person whose resume I'm going to stop to look at if there's not even a portfolio attached to it. Like, you're not, what are you talking about? So it's definitely is about how you are presenting yourself to the public or to the hiring authorities in these different aspects.
I think both of them talked about your like networking and your presence and stuff. And sometimes it's not even just your initial portfolio, the work that you've done, but it's like being like responding to meetups. Like, are you in like the different, there's a React group and you're in a React meetup, and I've had people that I've interviewed with, and they said, oh yeah, we saw that you're very active in the Atlanta tech community. You go to all these meetups, like just from there. We saw that you're in Women Who Code, or there's as engineers, we have Stack Overflow. Like, are you responding to questions? Like, are you putting that link on your resume and stuff? And that kind of helps give you some credibility. I've had interviewers skip technical questions because they saw my GitHub, which is not good now, but it was when I was an early engineer. But like, it's just different things like that they can kind of verify your work. So it helps tell the whole story and pop in some pieces that kind of give credibility to who you are before the interviewer invests time in talking with you.
Yeah, let me add to what Daniel said. Again, going back to the role of the HR tech company, I followed them for years. They used to have a podcast they did weekly with talent insights and different things in the industry. So I was always on their registration list, and I followed, if they did a webinar, I was on that. And so when my application comes 4 or 5 years after, the podcast had died over COVID, unfortunately, the company did a reorg at the time. So, a year later when they're adding staff, and I've been on their webinar, like my email pops up consistently. I've been listening and stuff. They knew, they were like, I know her, I've seen her name before somewhere. They're looking at my LinkedIn profile because, if you're registered for even an event like this, you're going to get a backup email. You might get a sales call email. They see the repeat attendees and things like that because they want to connect with your company. They want to do that. They want extra stuff from you. But that also opened the door for me in getting the role because I was a very consistent, follower of their brand.
I'm curious, what shows up in the HR space? I mean, as far as a profile, really, I'm kind of curious how that plays in to, to the whole candidate process, before and after hiring.
Yeah, I can add that. I'm looking for a breadth of knowledge or different experiences on your LinkedIn profile. So if you're coming in for this space, depending on what level, I want to see that you've worked with large companies, you work with small companies, or you work in supply chain and logistics, and you work with places where they're really advanced in tech, and maybe you worked in some places, maybe like a governmental institution, you work for ISD. And you have this background of this specific niche. So I'm also looking for a progression on the resume. Okay, so I should see a generalist to a generalist two, to a specialist two, to a manager, senior manager, and, kind of going on. So I want to see some kind of, okay, you're moving up in your career. And I understand pivots. The pandemic paused everyone. So I see people who made big changes, and then where did you land after? Did you go back, or you say, actually, I kind of want to do something different? and being able to explain that. I think a lot of times when for LinkedIn profiles, we try to put so much information, and all of these things aren't relevant. Every job I've had since, high school or college, is not relevant. Of course, I was working since we could work at the age we can work. Is it relevant to what I'm trying to get to? And I can explain those gaps. And I expect most candidates to be able to talk through what, hey, there's a big gap for 6 years. Well, oh, okay. Well, I had a kid and then I went to wait till they go to kindergarten. Okay, well, that makes sense to me. So those type of things.
That's kind of interesting that you bring up like the gaps in the profile and all those kind of things. Kind of getting into a little bit of like how do we discuss those items, or how do we present those in our profile in a way that is positive, or that paints kind of the right light on it, not necessarily whatever it might be. And how does the social media stuff play into this? I know we've talked about some of the LinkedIn, but like I also know AJ knows, right? Like we see in what you post on Facebook. We know what your Instagram looks like, right? Like a lot of people do not consider that part of their profile, but it shows up. What's the story there? Right? Like these are some of the ancillary pieces, right? But do they play a role? How do you paint that stuff? How do you make it, I guess, as right as it can be?
Right. In certain industries, it definitely does play a big role. As I mentioned before, I worked in media, and we would look at your social profile before we would consider calling you if it was for a on-air role or so for a television station. We're gonna look at your social first because we don't want to be legally obligated or come into any type of legal infraction. If we call you and interview you first, then we find out you were dancing naked in Cancun 5 years ago on spring break and have to deal with those implications. So we do it proactively before we make the decision to call and interview, consider you for those type of roles. And even had an instance where we had a candidate apply that let us know that he unfortunately had been catfished on social media by someone, and he was not prosecuted. They found he was not in the wrong, but it caused such an upheaval in the small market he was from that his company didn't renew his contract, and he kind of laid low for a couple of months in pursuing another media job because you could actively Google his name and get the whole story. So your social profile will play a part, in your career at some point if it's not palatable to whatever entities you're trying to pursue. And that's going to be the gist of it. Does the company you're pursuing really consider these things? The very straight-laced banking and financial organizations and stuff like that, they're not playing that. The risk management and media companies are not playing. Something hokey happened in Bermuda and you got photos and you got audio, whatever. While, more maybe new startup, if that's their thing, if it's something like a Grinder or some other places, they're all for it. Like it's innovative. What is the other one? OnlyFans. It's innovative. It's unique. It's part of their brand. Yeah, we're all for whatever you posted 5 years ago. So that is something you have to consider. Like, where do you see your path long term? So your social profile, again, it's something that will either check preemptively, you've applied, but I see your resume and it looks awesome, but I'm going to preemptively look at your social profile and I'm going to say, yes, no, let's go ahead and call her. She's got some suspect stuff here. Let me call legal. Do we want to deal with these type of problems? Or no, we're going to have to pass, and not even consider your application because there's some stuff there that we don't even want to touch. So it can definitely have implications, to your job search.
So AJ brought up a good point. I want to bring back to the profile personal brand component of this discussion. Who you're trying to appeal with is also part of your branding. You have to know your audience. So it's totally spot on that if you're going to go work in financial services or for the government, where you're going to have an extensive background check, you've got to make sure you're clean as a whistle. Otherwise, lock your shit down, people. I'm just like, that's my, LinkedIn should be the one that drives all professional content. Facebook, make it so that it's, even if you don't do questionable things. I literally contributed to an article while I was waiting to come into this about this subject. And I was like, put it all on private, right? Because you don't know what somebody else is going to perceive as negative or against their, company ethics or values or anything like that. So lock it all down, set it all to friends only, set your Instagram to private, at least while you're job searching, have a respectable profile and cover photo, or anything else that is public, have it be respectable that no one else could possibly ever question. Because in these cases, I err on the side of caution, because you just never know how somebody's going to take that trip to Bermuda in 2002 when you were a junior in college, even if it was 21 years ago. You know what I mean? You just never know. So safe than sorry. If it's not LinkedIn, lock it down, make it private. That's the stuff that makes me cringe, Amber. Amber was like, what makes you cringe? What makes you cringe is when you go look at somebody's Facebook profile and you're like, I just created the best professional brand for you. And you are like ready to become an executive. And now I'm looking at this profile photo, right? That's the stuff that makes me cringe, because I just did all this work for you and you've got stuff. So just hide it, at least while you're searching, right?
Well,
No
let
big
me,
deal.
and I'm not a tech, I'm not a tech person. Like I said, I worked with HR tech, but I'm not a super tech person. But one of the things that is the problem, and with the software that I'm talking about that can search out and build your profile from components of different sites, is you use the same email address for everything. Don't do that.
Mm-mm.
You should have an email account you want your jobs to come to hireajjohnson@gmail.com. That's the only way that you use that for LinkedIn and use that for anything you apply for. FreakyAJ on Facebook.com. That's what the secret stuff, and they can never connect the two. Like that's the biggest problem, is that's how they connect your profile with your GitHub site, with your LinkedIn, with your Instagrams, because your individuals use the same email for everything. And that's what's going to hem some people up. So you should definitely have a separate email account that starts a new brand and profile for you that focuses on what you want to focus on and doesn't get connected through all the digital mediums and algorithms and software to what you did over here if it's not related.
And I have a story for this, Angie, specifically, citing my own unbeknownst mistake. I was gifted a wallet at the beginning, like my sophomore year of college. And it ended up falling apart, like within a couple of months, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I didn't say any like super derogatory words. I was just like, wow, the quality on this wallet is really disappointing. Citing the brand name, right? My late 20s. I am being interviewed to start this new division in that same company. They went back to when I was 20 years old and found a Facebook post that was private, because back then, remember, there was the security exploit on Facebook posts, right? Because they had a corporate account, right? And they were able to do the download data thing. You know how we had that whole thing go down? They downloaded every little piece of anything that I had put on Facebook. They found that I had said disparaging remarks about the brand. And I was knocked out of contention immediately.
Use you as a case study, because the other thing to pull all of this into both your brand, does your profile uphold it? What do you do on social? Is also be careful what you say. You want to be, especially if you're going to like engage and post content on LinkedIn specifically, but also that like, maybe your 20-year-old self should think about your future self. Although in that particular situation, Stacy, that was a product defect. They should take that as market feedback. But we won't try to tell
I'm
them
very
that, right?
glad in perspective, because I met the person who took the job, and it was already a lot, and it was already going to be one of those kinds of jobs where you're doing everything.
Oh, I'm sure you dodged a bullet.
Oh, yeah. 100%. The person who took this job let me know how much of a bullet I dodged until he was able to basically, he had to walk several times and get like called back. It was a whole thing.
It was a thing. But here's where I'm going to bring this into like I have a few people who on my LinkedIn feed like to shame the hiring process extensively. You better sure as hell hope you don't ever want to get a job at a place that you've shamed. Or if somebody like AJ or Candace comes and looks at your profile and sees that you shame companies during the hiring process, you just took yourself out of all contention and you basically are a professional shamer from now on. So you also have to just be careful about, that's part of that whole persona of social media and what it's saying and how it does or could disrupt your brand and your profile.
Well, I want to counter that a little bit because I probably wouldn't care if you shamed a company. That's the issue with the employer brand. If you want to talk about stuff like that, I've worked with organizations.
That's a different panel, AJ.
I've worked with
But I
organizations
agree.
like, nobody within 50 miles wants to work for you guys. I can't pull people out of the sky. Like they know your reputation, they know your managers, like we've had those discussions. So I probably wouldn't care that much if it's in the fact, hey, hopefully they get better. But I'm not gonna worry about that.
I'm curious, Danielle, we haven't heard as much from the like hiring manager side. Like, do you look at this? How do you like before that candidate profile shows up, like when you're scrubbing through what HR is thrown before you, what do you look at?
Yeah, I definitely look at the LinkedIn also, and to reiterate again, the social media, it's not going to help you. It's only going to hurt you. So just make it private. Like I can't iterate that enough. But if there is like, it kind of tells you about a person, like how they are, like if they're constantly complaining, like, okay, yes, they're bashing a company that they didn't want to work for. But if it's a constant, I'm complaining about this, complaining about this, like, oh, I don't want to work with this person on my team. But luckily, HR does a lot of the initial screens for us. So we'll just get the resume, the LinkedIn link. But we look at, I'll look at, if you give me a link, I'm going to look at it. If you link your GitHub on your resume, I'm going to go look at it. So it better be good. Like, don't waste my time. If it's not up to par, if you don't think it's good, don't put it on there. If your LinkedIn, your LinkedIn should be very good. Like it should be filled out. But if it's not, if the dates don't match or you haven't kept up your LinkedIn, don't put the link on your resume. Like anything you give me, we're going to go look at. But just make it, you need to curate what I'm seeing about you in a quicker space. Because sometimes it'll be like a quick 2-minute thing, like, oh, no, I don't want to talk to this person. Like there's 50 applicants that I got to sort through and I can only interview 5. Especially when I'm looking at like our intern class, for example, like we don't have time to go through dig deep in everything. So make it quick, make it easy, make it concise, and then eliminate any doubt just from a quick look.
And I'm sure Candace can confer, working on the HR and the talent side, we don't make the hiring decisions, but we make the decision on what the hiring manager sees. If there's 100 applications, I'm not looking at all 100 applications. I'm not talking to 50 people. I'm going to pare it down to the top 10 or so. And if they want too much money, they're out. They don't have the skill set we ask for, they're out. So I'm getting down to that 5 to 7 people that fits what Danielle is asking for. And then she'll vet from there. So you have to consider who you're talking to as well with your resume, or if it's coming through the ATS, it's coming to me. There are some active hiring managers, they'll be in there, it gets on our nerves, like back off. But then sometimes if I don't understand the role, I do need their help to say, what are you looking for? Which application sticks out to you? What resume connects with you if it's something, a role I'm not familiar with. But 90% of the time, they only see what we allow them to see, what we vetted and pulled out for them.
I will say sometimes after an interview, like something felt a little off or there was something that just didn't, I don't know, like something's a little tricky. There's post looking too, like, okay, let me do a little Google search on this person and see what I can find. So just because you're making it all the way to the interview doesn't mean you're in the clear and go make everything private or public and do all that. There's if something feels off, we're going to search.
Right. I was going to add, we do get, as AJ said, I'd say for every role that I have open, I probably close to 500 or 600 applications. I'd say maybe 50% are even remotely close to the experience I'm looking for. And then how do I get a stack of 300 down to 50, down to 15, down to 5? So any small thing of I'm not willing to relocate. Okay, already take you off the stack. They have experience in this company, but not necessarily exactly the thing we're looking for. Okay, we're putting you off because we just don't have a lot of time. And then probably by the time we posted the role, we've been needed this person. So the opening's been open for months. We've been needing that extra headcount or staffing. And so to even go through, even when I talk to recruiters, bring me candidates and they have screened them and they're not even, somehow we missed the mark. We got to circle back and say, hey, before you bring me anything else, can we align on who we are looking for? Because it seems like there's some misalignment. Because you can't waste time, and I can't waste time either interviewing candidates if we're not even on the same page of what I'm looking for anyway. And the way we do hiring at our company, we have for every position there are like 4 or 6 interviews in one day. So I'm back to back to back, and then we make a decision at the end of the day. And then they're inclined for a role, they're not. So to even have one off, because there are 4 people interviewing and then 4 candidates, like we're all interviewing each of the candidates all today, kind of round robin. So when I see some misalignment, I'm like, ugh, it's okay. And we usually all come back with the same type of feedback of, I'm not sure if we are, this candidate's ready or what we're looking for. So.
I love this. This is explaining so much. So in case y'all were wondering why you weren't getting the phone call, blink, blink. So with that, let's talk about the kind of touchy subject, right? Resumes. What is a good one? Should you always send a one-pager first? Do they even matter? What should be your focus? How should you tailor? What is going on in the resume space? Because I have heard from, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, my father's a recruiter. I grew up around tech recruiters. Y'all are a special bunch. Hey, I didn't have to say nothing else. But like, even they have varying opinions on what this actually looks like. And in another forum that a number of us are also a part of, I've even submitted my own profile and got predominantly good feedback, but I got like 1 or 2 like going like, why isn't this like 3 to 4 pages? I'm like, are you gonna read 3 to 4 pages?
No. When you bring up the biggest, I'm going to use the word problem, but that's not the right word. I would say the biggest challenge in resumes is it is heavily subjective. What makes a good resume? And I always joke, and I'm like, if you go ask 10 resume writers for an opinion, you're going to get 15 different points of view. And that same goes for, AJ and Candace are working with multiple hiring managers. Each of them has different preferences in what they're looking for on a resume. Danielle's different from everybody has different opinions in how it should work. And then you throw an ATS in there, and now we're trying to appease a computer's opinion. And it's like, no matter, everybody thinks WTF in this world, right? And when we were talking before everybody came in, I said that this is what I said that I think is like the good summary. I think that I think a good resume strikes a balance between content rich enough to appease any data parsing that may or may not be involved. Notice I said data parsing, not AI, not bots, data parsing tools involved. However, it's still streamlined enough so that when a human comes and reads it, their eyeballs don't cross because they're reading buzzword soup. And this is where I think a lot of people have a hard time writing their own resumes, is they either try to shove it into this arbitrary 1-page length that is beaten into our head at College Career Services. And after you have 3 jobs, it's really hard to do that while showing accomplishments and a profile and key skills and, and outcomes and all the things and a value proposition with a brand. But then they go too far and aren't objective enough to streamline it down to core elements that represent the value and impact you bring to an employer in a streamlined way that goes boom, boom, boom. And that is a hard dance. And that's a hard middle to find on your own because you're too close to the forests for the trees. And while this might be a commercial for my services, I'm just saying this is something that you as a human trying to write your own resume need to watch out for. You've got to sit down and be objective about what matters while also telling the story you need to tell in whatever length that is. But if you're over 2 pages, you're just being wordy. There it is. That is my opinion on resume length in 3 minutes or less.
I can second all of that. I think it's depending. I mean, the life is depending on the position you're going for. Like Stacy, looking at your LinkedIn, I know yours is definitely not fitting on 1 page for sure. But as opposed to someone else who might be new to the industry, 1 page is fine. But as long as it's concise, there's no fluff. You don't need your GPAs. You don't need your high school diploma, like Candace mentioned. Like stuff that's relevant to the job that you're hiring for. You want to make sure they can get a feel for your experience without causing any doubt. So if you're listing things under your skills, you better be able to talk about it. Like I'm not going to list like React as a skill, but then if someone asks me, what's a component mean? Like I should be able to answer that. But also if I listed something as a skill and I don't have it anywhere in any of my jobs, like that I used it or any of my projects, like that casts doubt that that's actually even a skill. So just make sure everything you're doing is kind of tailored so it all kind of fits together and telling one story. And just every experience should be unique. And if you did something similar at different jobs, copy paste is not a solution. Like it's just you're just causing up space. And you'd be surprised at how many terrible resumes there are out there. So please, concise, keep it together and keep it honest too.
There are so many bad resumes. And one of the platforms Stacy was talking about is where she and I came across each other, and I get to see a lot of said bad resumes and a lot of 6-pagers. And Danielle hit a lot of really, I would say you and I'm so thank you. A hiring manager and I are saying the same thing. I guess my approach to this whole world has been validated. Thank you. But we were talking about this before too. Stacy said, she's like, I have 6 resumes. If you are, for instance, a VP of engineering, you should already have 3. You should have a VP level, a senior manager level, and a CTO level, because at a different size company, you could be any of those 3 things. But a senior manager is a little bit closer to the code, and a CTO is a little bit closer to the business. So that's where your streamlining should come into play. But then you might have another line in the matrix, because maybe you could be an HR tech, but maybe you could be in health tech because you worked at those 2 companies. But you highlight one or the other depending on where your focus is. And if you're kind of domain agnostic, you choose the best outcomes you have to make. So this is where we talk about real hyper tailoring experience and industry focus. And I know that seems daunting if you're like, well, I could be any 3 of those levels, but I have 3 domains. That's 9. That's a matrix of 9. Well, you already know that. If you do the work up front and you know that those are your job search options, now you have 9 pre-tailored resumes to each one of those options, and you only need to spend 5 minutes tailoring each instead of reinventing the wheel each time, which is why I'm a huge proponent of planning and having kind of purpose behind your job search instead of like trigger happy on the apply button, is because that's how you do this in a focused but not like time exhaustive way.
It's interesting you brought that up, Angie, because like even for I'm not C-suite, like some of the folks in this room. But why did I have 6 resumes? Because it's taking 2 pages and making one cohesive story, right? For whatever that company is, for whatever that job is. And then there's different variations on those based off of scope, sphere of influence. What is that company trying to hire for? And little covert thing here. Do your homework. Yeah. That job is looking for, that job description is a bold-faced lie. I love y'all HR people, but like that copy paste bold-faced lie.
Not all the time. Like sometimes they'll give me, they say I can change up
You
to
just
20%.
said not all the time.
Yeah,
Come
they
on,
say I can,
Stacy.
if I need to
It's a
customize it,
wish
if I need to
list.
update it, I say, what can I change on here? Because you don't use this software no more. We don't do this anymore. We're remote now. We got to update that. To the ATS and the resume issue, and I'm a recruiter. I have multiple resumes. Some roles I target, I know I'm going to be actively recruiting more, so I talk about the numbers. Other roles, it's more operations focused. I get to decide on strategy, so I don't talk about the numbers. Don't ask me to frontline recruit for this. So I have multiple resumes. The ATSs. I have never worked with one that actively parsed information, keywords, maybe Taleo, but I've not seen that system yet. Even working with HR, I've not seen it. Everybody that I know, every recruiter looks at the resume, either looks at the resume or like I said, doesn't look at the resume. And let me kind of give you a perspective once you've applied in your NDATS. Because Candace said it earlier, if I've got 100 resumes, I know at least half of them are not going to qualify at all. On your resume, if you do not have, if your first job or the title on your job is not the job you're applying for, and it doesn't appear in the ATS, so say right now you're going through a tech boot camp, right now you're a waitress, but you're doing a tech boot camp, you're excelling, you're a top student, fine. But if your application says waitress and waitress pops up in my ATS, I am never looking at your resume. I'm looking for a entry-level coder, I'm looking for a UX designer, I'm not looking for a waitress. It needs to say that when it comes into my ATS, Amber Treshnell, and I don't know if that's you, UX designer, US researcher, UI designer. I'm not looking for a waitress. I won't even click on it. So that's something, the way your resume comes into that ATS needs to immediately give me your value proposition, just like it should in writing on the actual resume itself, because you're going to get automatically loaded. It's that quick, I have to get this down to whoever. So if I'm looking for an HR director, Candace's resume says HR business partner, I'm going to look at hers. I might look at the benefit director. I might look at a talent acquisition director. I'm not going to look at an accountant. I'm not going to look at a web developer who comes in, if that's the first job you have or what you title your resume, I'm not even going to look at it because it's not in the same parameters and in sphere that will it doesn't present to me that it's going to have the skill sets I need. You might be the perfect person, but you didn't set yourself up to catch my attention once you're in the ATS. The other thing about ATS is, again, sometimes there's active hiring managers, sometimes they're not. So sometimes I don't even get a chance to look at the applications. The hiring manager's like, interview her, and get rid of the rest. I'm like, they show you're the manager, so that's all I can do. I might peek in and see, but if they've looked as well, then they know what they're looking for. So I'll just interview who they said interview, and everybody else is in the wind until some more people apply. So that's something you have to consider can happen sometimes as well. But your resume overall, to me, I don't feel like there's any bad resumes. To me are misspelled, not formatted correctly, and definitely don't have, again, relevant information that's pertinent to the job you're applying for. And what I mean by that, especially more recent information. If you did it 5 or 10 years ago, that's kind of a hokey space, and you definitely need somebody like Angie to help you navigate getting that information to the forefront. But if it's, if my company's misspelled, if there's, just any type of errors like that, I've seen every type of layout, especially when you work in media and different areas. They get creative as long as the context is there. And the info, like I said, and I can see what your skills are, and I can see where you've worked before. Definitely some people that have worked at great companies, they can get away with a lot. That's why people put X Meta, X Amazon, X Google if they get laid off, because we don't even care what some people, they're looking at the cachet of the company, but look at your skill sets too now. Were they really executing something, or were they just, they floated in and landed there? You'll find that out on the tail end if you hire them, what their real expertise is. But yeah, sometimes cachet can get you in there, and your resume can look a little wild. But like I said, the main things for me are spellings and different things like that. I remember some story when I was in college. One of my good friends, she was an English major, graduated before me, graduated summa cum laude, everything. She had a little boyfriend, and he was in the media side. And so she applies for a job as an editor for the local newspaper. Now, she's just an English major. She applies for an editor position, which is at least a mid-senior level position. Like, she has no journalistic clue what title. And she tells me, I sent a resume, an application, so I graduated in 03, so I'm a little old. So she's like, I sent it in the mail, And she showed me a copy of the letter she sent to him, and it's everything. I said, you sent this to the newspaper's called the Herald Leader. You sent this exact letter to the Herald Leader. She's like, yes, what's wrong? And I said, the Herald, Herald, and she spelled it Harold. And this is the editor job for a major newspaper. And she's like, should I send it again? I said, no, absolutely not. Not unless you want to get laughed at again. Like, no, don't do it. So definitely spelling, definitely editing, and then definitely make sure the content it fits the role you're applying for. Have your 6-9 resumes.
Bro, you said something, AJ, I think is a good point though. We focus a lot on content, but if you don't present the content in a way that's formatted for somebody to easily grab the highlights, your content is for naught. And so in this aforementioned unnamed channel where there is a resume review option, a lot of people will be like, I just want you to review this for content, ignore the format. And I'm like, I can't review your content unless you're showing it to me in the way that you're going to display it, because the two go hand in hand. And so that is an actual important component to how you display your things, in addition to trying to weed it out and have all those different kind of tailored versions.
Right. And I know at some point we're going to talk about like SEO a little bit and everything. And I want to say to that again, context and content is everything. There's a McDonald's on every corner, but we don't need to be eating there anymore, unless you have kids and nobody eats there, because the diet, the burgers aren't real meat and this and whatever. So, but they've got the market, they're everywhere. But so if you get your SEO up and you're everywhere, but if the context and the content is not right, you're going to keep getting passed up. You could be number one on the Google search. We don't care.
To that kind of effect on some of the resume items, we've had a lot of questions about gaps and short employment stints. Like, what do you put on there? So for me, I went with like, okay, what's like the 3 most recent jobs? Like, and then I'm going to send you to LinkedIn for everything else, because like if you need to go further back than, 6 years, 7 years, whatever that is, then like magically, I don't know how I'm making those skills appear.
Sometimes you can amalgamate the jobs. It's my fun word. So, I mean, if they were all contract roles, or several contract roles together, cluster them together, and you can explain that you can explain it in your interview. And that's the other thing I meant to say. Your goal and the resume's goal is to get you to the interview. You have to get me to call you. That is what your resume needs to do. So again, write them, customize them. That is the goal of resumes. You can get in there and tell me your story. That is the goal. But yeah, you can amalgamate sometimes, bundle things together. If they were the same industry, there's subtle ways to do it. Sometimes you have to change your job title. There's some people that are over titled in their job. They think they're an HR director, but it's a nonprofit and there's 20 people and their budget is $10,000 and they're called an HR director. And it's like, no, Amazon's not going to hire you in a director role. No, you need to talk. You're a generalist. They were being nice. Everybody, everybody there's a director. So you need to adjust, read the market. You were a generalist, call yourself a generalist, things like that. So you have to be savvy, do the research to understand where you actually are in the space. But there are some unique things you can do. Again, I said something about being a waitress. Everybody knows what a waitress does. Some people like to make their resume all even. Like, I need 3 bullet points for everything. We know what a waitress does. I like to say, don't talk about what I don't want to do anymore. If you need to show that you had a consistent job while you were finishing school, had the boot camp, put it on there. But I don't need 3 lines of I flipped burgers, I did this, did that. I was a waitress at Hooters. It paid the bills. That's all. Just put that line on. You were there 2 years. I worked at Top Golf doing this. It's not relevant, but it shows a consistent work history. You worked around people. You can be around people, that type of thing. But I don't need you trying to figure out how to make it relevant to a developer role or UX role. Maybe if you were doing event services or something and you can show that you coordinated this banquet or something like that, fine. But just put the time periods you were there, show that you were not just sitting at home, in a corner, and do that. But again, if it's not relevant, if it's not going to draw me in to make me want to talk to you and bring you in, and consider you for an interview, you're not giving me the right context and content.
Thank you, AJ. I think you had so many great points. in Amazon, the title, people put a lot of stock into their title on the resume, but like we really look at to what you did and what comes right after that. Because I can tell you at Amazon, we if I see a vice president outside of the company, they're probably more of a, if we had senior directors, more of a senior director, sometimes senior manager level, because of the volume and the amount of money our vice presidents actually are responsible for. So we're $1 billion company. Vice president at a $10 million company is not the same. Might only be a senior manager or a director. So I said a lot of people like, I was vice president when I come into Amazon, and I'm like, I'm with you. I used to be an HR director. However, when you're talking about scope and responsibility, what does that equate to in this company? You're really just middle management, and be okay with that. And that's why that, okay, so what did you do? What are you responsible for? Who did you report to? How many did you manage managers? Were you a manager of managers? Were you a manager of managers that manage more people or projects? The individual contributor glorified with an admin as your direct report. So those type of questions is what we kind of dig into. And I will warn you this. We also have an ATS software internally at Amazon. It parses your resume so horribly. I wish people knew that. Like, I don't know what the system is. It's not look as beautiful as the time that you spent on it. I know.
Can we get this in a historical, like a point of history that somebody in HR just admitted there's an ATS system that parses damn resumes, because there's so many people out there that try to convince us this doesn't happen. But also now I think I know why I've gotten so many senior program managers hired into Amazon.
I'm sure we're recording, so I won't say too much, but yeah, like we have it's a team that's bringing me resumes. So when people try to put them in a PDF, sometimes that helps. Sometimes when I'm having an interview and they send me, I had a one-on-one interview, they'll send me their resume and they created it like directly as my email. That's so much better than what I get from the recruiting side of the things that they look like, because we take a lot of that out, and that objective at the top, I know you think it looks great. It doesn't look great when you get it the other way. Like, it's very much a pace formula value type thing. It's not the line and the indentation, all that's like not as pretty. So I tell people, as much as the resume is gonna get, the resume is to get you to talk to me, and that's what we're here for. So let's work on that. After I like you, I know that you have the experience. That's what's getting you in the door. That resume does mean a lot. We really don't look at LinkedIn profiles after the fact, because by the time the recruiter has gotten it to me, she already did that. Or he already did that. They've already done some of that. So by the time I see it, they should be ready to go. They have the experience already. So most of the people already have those type of questions. Now I'm looking for the extra. Now I'm looking for the bias for action, deliver results, data-driven decisions. Like, I'm looking for those type of things when I'm talking to candidates. And lots of times we get delighted of people who honestly, they like the company, but they might not know the role. So they're like, I'm just taking this to get in, and I'm going to do something else. And I'm like, okay, well, I kind of need somebody who wants to be here like a long time. So I think that, just when people are being super honest in interviews, and I get it, it's a launching pad. Amazon on my resume has helped me more than any company I've ever worked for. Now I get recruiters to reach out to me directly because of the name that's on the resume. So I get it, and I get what we're all doing. But can you at least act like you want to be with us for a little bit or be on my team?
I don't know. I think a great way to summarize some of the things that you're talking about, Candace, is hashtag know your FANG level. As gross as that sounds, knowing where you scale in that scale puts you in an appropriate mindset and position responsibility understanding. Perfect hand raised. I'm an L7, L8. I know this about myself. It's been pretty consistent.
I'm stealing this phrase, by the way.
What?
I'm stealing it. It's so spot on. It's the easiest way to explain what I try to explain to people in like 3 minutes. Love it.
Know your FANG level and get your leak code on, I guess. No, but but it's kind of an interesting thing here when I you know, my personal journey looks like alphabet soup in terms of titles. Technically speaking, I had principal engineer on my resume 10 years ago. I'm senior staff where I'm at now, L7. I don't think it's a downgrade. I made more money each time. It's all right. So, you know, it's really just figuring out what that actually means in terms of like your work and scope and what journey you're on, I would say, from my perspective. And I am someone who filters through resumes because I've also been the manager. And as like the lead tech person, in addition to the hiring manager, and I don't know if this is true for you, Danielle or Candace, AJ, Angie, what your experience is, but usually those resumes also show up on my doorstep if the hiring manager is interested in talking to them. So I'm kind of curious what's with regard to some of these things, and we're kind of move a little bit forward because we don't have that much time left. We have a lot of questions about SEO and especially around LinkedIn. And I think also, you know, those two things are intrinsically linked. Ha ha ha, pun. But it's kind of true. Like, do you need a good picture? Do you need a background image? Do you need to provide context and labeling and every other thing about your LinkedIn history in order for it to show up, right? No. AJ, go for it.
What people don't understand is there's a system called LinkedIn Recruiter that enterprises and corporate buy into. What we see in LinkedIn Recruiter is not what you see on the consumer side. I see your photo, I see your job title, and I see your job history. Your banner, your cute logos, all that stuff we don't see when we are working in that system. Now, I work toggling between the two systems because what the other side won't show me is how active you are on LinkedIn. If I need to send you an email, are you going to see it this week or in 3 months when you're job searching again? I need, are you an active user and stuff like that? What groups are you a part of? That's what I don't see is kind of your affiliated network, although it will send me similar profiles, but it doesn't, it's like a whitewashed version. So I can get down to the data and analytics of, do you have these skill sets or keywords? So you need to beef it up from an SEO aspect of like keywords, which have to be relevant skills and things that you do have and can speak to, as someone said earlier. But the visuals that you see on the consumer side of LinkedIn, we don't see on the LinkedIn recruiter side. So, but to that, there are some companies that don't pay the exorbitant price LinkedIn is charging enterprises now and individuals for that aspect. So then there is a aspect of using SEO, using Boolean search to be able to do what they call X-ray search of the public and consumer side of LinkedIn. But again, the pictures and the cutesy stuff don't matter as much. It is still about content and context. Are you accurately explaining? Like I said about my friend earlier, your profile does not read as a recruiter. Does it still read as the accountant? Somebody said earlier, their accountant moving into tech. Does it still read accountant versus tech? Does it still read marketing or HR versus tech? If you're trying to career transition, if it does, you'll never appear in somebody looking for the entry-level tech role, the mid-level tech roles, search for an individual in that space. But no, all the cute stuff, it's cute, but like I said, if a recruiter works for a very big company, the Amazons, the Fangs, the top 5 consulting firms, the Fortune 50s, they've got their recruiters have LinkedIn Recruiter. They're paying $1 million a year for 50 seats, and it don't matter to them. It matters to the mid-sized, smaller firms that can't afford it, that they only got 1 seat, that they share, split, stuff like that. There's some stuff going on because it's expensive now. It's crazy. Then the front end works a little bit better, and they have to, they'll be a little bit more interested. But again, content and contacts.
I will say I've gotten my current job and my previous job off of LinkedIn by recruiters reaching out to me. So don't discount like the value in having the content in it. Like treat it as your resume, have the exact same stuff, have your skills on there, have have your, even if it's small bullets, like that's fine. It allows recruiters for the both of my companies were mid-size, like it allows individual recruiters to come find and send messages and search. So yeah, please don't discount the value in putting the time into your LinkedIn profile.
The green banner, when it was first rolled out over COVID, what it used to say, like, I got laid off. So it used to say something that wasn't as friendly as seeking, whatever it says now.
It's open to work, and I
Open
really
to
want to
work.
know what you guys think of it, all three
What
of you.
what I really think. When it initially rolled out, I felt, unfortunately, it was a crutch for individuals who, again, like I said, aren't on LinkedIn every day, didn't know how the system worked, why do I need to connect to people? Why do I need to connect to at least 250 people so I at least show up in somebody's algorithm? And things like, and why do I need to connect to people within my career network and not just my cousins, my family, and my colleagues that are going to be meddling and be mad if you leave the company, stuff like that. So initially it was a crutch. It did not help people understand the value and how they needed to approach LinkedIn to make their job search more successful when everybody was getting laid off. And I hurt for that because everybody turned on the green light and thought they got priority in consideration for a role. No, I'm looking for the person who has the skill set, the experience, the context of the role that I'm looking for. And if you're working or not, that doesn't matter to me, but I'm not going to talk to you first because you're not working. So that's how I felt about it initially. And I still kind of feel like that because, again, people don't turn it on until they need it and they think it's an automatic boost, and it is not. I go for who matches what I need.
Here's my perspective on it. Do you put desperately seeking a relationship in your Tinder headline?
Some people do.
And
they ain't getting a date. And if they are, I don't think you want to go on that date.
Hashtag
right?
warm-blooded. Is that?
In my opinion, based on how the recruiter functionality in LinkedIn works, and this is why I was curious to see what you think, because there's a lot of competing information on this. But again, I err on the side of a little bit of like caution and perception there. Mm-hmm. That like it very rarely doesn't look desperate to me.
A little bit. So like I said, as a recruiter, you're not getting priority over anybody just because it's turned on.
You're no more likely to get tapped by a recruiter with it on than you are if you have it off and have your behind the scenes job search settings set up appropriately for your targets, and you have a well-crafted, completed profile aligned with your brand.
But where it can be of value to you is that the rest of your network, the marketing manager at a company can see, oh, she's looking for a job. I think we had an opening in our company, one of those, what they call the hidden job market. Somebody might be able to reach out to you and say, hey, they just laid off this person, or this person just quit or resigned or whatever. That's how it could help you. But again, it's not going to give you priority in my search, whether I'm using the consumer or the paid LinkedIn side for recruiting. There was something else I was going to say. And just like Angie said, who puts desperately seeking on their, what you say, Tinder? It just, don't put that in your job heading. People say currently seeking new. No, talk about what your skill set. You are a HRBP or a UX designer with these skill sets, these technical skill sets. Don't put currently seeking my new UX role, looking for a new, don't put that there. Nobody does a search, SEO search for currently seeking. Now I did one time because I want to see how many of these fools are out here thinking that's going to attract somebody. And there was over 200,000 profiles.
There's a lot of fools. Because can I clarify something AJ's talking about? The headline in your profile, also called the title, that's where you want to SEO optimize in your LinkedIn profile. That's one of the filter functions a lot of people use to search, either if you're free or in a paid or recruiter version. And so that's why you don't want to start it with hashtag open to work, because you just wasted 13 characters or something like that right off the bat. That's also why you don't want it to be principal engineer at X, because you're also losing out on brand and character count. And the other thing I'll add is we talked about, Danielle talked about earlier how if she has an interesting interview with somebody, she'll go look them on LinkedIn. I had a client who got laid off 5 months ago and had the good old open to work and made a post about it. But that's the only thing that client had posted in months. So the first thing that anybody saw when they went to his profile was, whatever the content was, last activity. Here's a post from 5 months ago about how I got laid off. That just doesn't how's that going to look?
I
Don't
tell
be
you what,
desperate.
Angie, I'm going to bring up a specific example. I cited that I had helped a lot of people find jobs this year. There was a particular coworker in a different group. There was a large layoff at the company I was at the beginning of the year. And this person had worked at Apple, had worked at these big names, right?
Was it the
first three-
Apple, X Google, X?
They didn't put this in their top of profile thing, but they had a very poor, in my opinion, at the time, LinkedIn profile. And, you know, in my opinion, and their resume was not action oriented. It was not about impact. Tell me what you did and how it made money or how it led people. If you can't do that in like a single sentence that fits in one line, did you do it? Right. And to that effect, he went from 2 calls in a month to 12 interviews the next week.
Mm-hmm. It's LinkedIn, we talk a lot about LinkedIn here, but it's a hugely underutilized resource from job seekers. And it is an increasingly leveraged resource on the hiring side. So y'all better keep up, because that's where a lot of the reverse activity is being found. And there's a lot of value to be had there in spending a little bit of time. It's a very minor amount of time to optimize it all on the front end. And now it's a completely free resource that helps kind of perpetuate everything. And if you are a woman who codes, sorry, Mike, where are you? But like, if you're in this group, you are a highly sought after talent, right? And so you need to be visible, and you need to have your brand articulated well and optimized on LinkedIn, because you're the kind of people, as tech realizes it needs to have more women that code, no offense, Mike, like, right? That you need to be visible, because you are the type of people that are being recruited. And it's easy, and it's a free resource that just perpetuates this whole brand thing. I started my entire business on LinkedIn, and it's because, in case you can't notice, I am a little mouthy. Stacy and I are too truthful, especially add AJ to the mix, and the three of us are just way too mouthy. I started my whole business on LinkedIn because I was like, I'm going to be a career coach. I got a perspective, and I started commenting on people's stuff, commented on some recruiter's snarky post about how she doesn't help people change careers. And I was like, I help people change careers, and boom, there was a client in my inbox, right? So it's very, very powerful, whether you have a business or whether you want a job.
One of the areas on LinkedIn a lot of people might not realize that is actually helpful to you is the endorse section. So you can get endorsements from previous coworkers or colleagues, but it's actually you endorsing people is a great way to kind of clear up like your personal brand. So if I write an endorsement for a coworker, oh, I loved working with Lydia. Her attention to detail is fantastic. I love that she always refactored and worked and had dry code. It shows what I value as myself, because I'm commenting on another coworker or colleague or friend, like what I appreciated about them. So that is one of the areas that I kind of look at too. Like, are people, talking about other people? Like, it's just another indicator into your personality and how you collaborate with others.
And somebody else asked really quickly, does it matter that you've worked at X big company or XYZ? How does that show up in these like program filters? I mean, Candace, Danielle, AJ, Angie, does that matter that I worked at Google and it put it in my resume and I put it at the top of my thing? I know we touched a little bit about it, but X, Y is, X of XYZ.
It depends on the organization that's seeking the talent. Like I said, I work for a media company. I'm not going to try to pull a news director from, Fanatics. And I worked at Fanatics before Stacy also. I think I saw that. So, I'm not going to be able to get that type of talent from there, obviously. And I know that. I know what I'm seeking. So it's going to depend on what that hiring manager and that company is seeking. Some people aren't going to look at you because they know you don't want too much money. If I know my industry, I know where we sit in the compensation band. I know who not to talk to. like, I just don't want to have that argument with you in the initial conversation. Like, we only make, like you said, 20 million, and you guys are $1 billion company. We ain't got it.
I would also add, yeah, it does matter, but more importantly, I work in a warehouse. This is one of the things I look at. I work in a warehouse. We do packages. I'm an HR professional. I wear safety vests and safety shoes every day, and steel toes. So that is the place that I'm working. And then my LinkedIn, and I was on LinkedIn before I was on Twitter, before Facebook, because I was in HR. So that one has all of my experience. It has pictures of me at work. I want people to know diversity is important. So I celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day in August, People with Disabilities Week, Latino Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. I'm going to make posts about the things that I want to be attached to. So my LinkedIn doesn't look empty. I'm promoting the company or the brand. I'm also talking always about HR. I posted an article about kindness, and those are things I want to be associated with. So, and to answer, I think it was Angie's question. I had open to work on a profile before, and I had my manager reach out to me and say, "Hey, are you not happy? Someone says you turned on your open to work." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I was just gonna keep that on because I wanted to keep it on." But I think I go to LinkedIn for everything. I've been on a long time, and then I'm also sharing what I used to serve on a city council as well. So when I was on city council, I said things about government and educating them, like, "Hey, your water, sewer, trash, library pickup, those type of." I educated people and let them know that. So when people actually met me in person and they saw me and say, "Hey, I see your posts all the time. I know you worked and you were on city council," or "I know your daughter's starting a YouTube channel." I'm talking about the things that I want to be associated with, and the content is about that same thing. So if anyone met me and say, "Candace didn't talk about politics or her daughter or Amazon and packages and HR," I'd be shocked. Because that's the same things I'm always talking about.
Well, I gotta say, we are at the end of this just discussion. I feel like we could just sit down and have a world reform council on this particular topic. But with that, I want to ask each of our panelists to chime in with their last little piece of advice, where we can find them and what they're up to.
I guess I start. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I think they posted our links there. I do help with career strategy as well. Now, the thing about me, I'm very confined in what I offer to you. I offer that straightforward, let's get your resume tight, let's get your profile set up so that if you're jumping into a job search, you can quickly see some results, not, drag things out. I'm not going to talk about how your 10-year-old self and what your manager did for you. We're strictly functional, executable techniques for your job search. But I am still doing executive search, more so on the sales side. So I don't hire for any tech roles. And so I'm accessible if anybody is interested. Last little bit of advice, again, like I said, with your resume, your goal is to get to the interview with me with that, because you don't really have a relationship with the company for the most part that you're trying to apply, that you have applied to. If you haven't gotten your resume pushed through from a friend or a connection or network your way into it, you have no connection. So you have to speak to what I'm looking for and get that interview. So
you can find me on LinkedIn also. I am in Atlanta, so I'm not local. My company does hire outside of Georgia. We're remote. We're mostly remote, but we're not hiring right now, but we will in the future. So please connect on LinkedIn with me. I will say I saw there was some chatter about boot camp grads and questions about that. Myself, I'm a career switcher, boot camp grad. I TA'd a couple of cohorts with the boot camps and did some tutoring and everything. So I am more than happy to read resumes, talk about my experience, chit chat with anybody that's like looking to break into tech on kind of how you can line your resume up or anything like that. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We can jump on a call, go back and forth on LinkedIn. But I love all the perspectives that what's it non regular, not CS backgrounds, but like people that are switching over. I love their perspectives. They bring such value. So if you need someone to pump you up for an interview or anything, I'm happy to get ready with you and to talk to you about stuff.
Okay, well, definitely Candace on your LinkedIn. Connected with Stacy, and if see your role or anything at the company, certainly I can certainly refer you. I would just, as far as advice is, apply for the role that you want the first time, and if you're not there, then put a plan together on how to get there. We need to see more women who code and more women in tech, and definitely appreciative to you all for this opportunity to speak with you. And so many great people and great talent that I, would hope one day that the company could hire everyone that wants to be hired. I know everyone doesn't want to work there, but also to the panelists, thank you as well. I learned so much. I was like, oh my gosh, they can help me as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Candace is totally right. This part of the fun of these things for me is not only just squawk boxing, because I love that, but it's the connections with everybody else and words of wisdom that I get to hear too. So this has been fantastic. Stacy, thank you for moderating us. As far as me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll fill up your news feed because I try really hard to be a thought leader there. It's exhausting, but it's amazing. And you can find me at careerbenders.com. And also, fun fact, I have a podcast called No More Mondays where we talk to people who actually like what they do for work. So would love for you to tune into that if you would like to hear some words of wisdom. It is the softer woo-woo inspirational side of, like AJ, the practical, actionable, tactical coaching I definitely focus on when it comes to career planning and development. So thank you, Melissa and Stacy, for having all of us.
Thank y'all for being here. My goodness.
Yes, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you for our esteemed panelists.